So it was around 2002, 2003. I was in high school. And there was an album that came out. Me and one of my best friends, we would jam this album constantly. And we would do it when most of our other friends weren't around. Maybe a little bit of embarrassment, but we loved the album. You know, at that age, you don't always want to tell your friends if you're into certain things if you know they're going to poke fun at you. But thinking about it now, I don't know why. It's a good damn album by a good damn band who had a hell of a list of awesome bands that were influences for them. And I'm talking about the album, The Young and the Hopeless, which was the second studio album by the band, Good Charlotte. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, music lovers, especially my rock music lovers. That's right. Welcome back for another one. So today we're going to talk about the band Good Charlotte and their second studio album. Now, when I think about the band Good Charlotte, I'll be honest, this is what I used to think in my teenage years. And I remember exactly what I used to think because I was into a lot of music. At least I was, influenced at that young age by the older friends that we used to go to the skate park and skate with, me and my buddies. And we started getting into a lot of bands, which I've mentioned a million times. AFI, one of my favorite bands. I got into them because of those guys. Listening to Rancid, NoFX, Bad Religion, Social Distortion, the Dead Kennedys, the Dropkick Murphys. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And for me, it was all awesome music. So when a band like Good Charlotte, who came out, especially with this second studio album, and really kind of kicked down the door to the mainstream, you wouldn't always at that age, your teenage years, admit, especially with my group of friends, I don't know if it was the same for you, if you were into the same style of music, but if there was a band that had that look, that pretty much, they looked like one of these other bands you would listen to, but those bands weren't getting, Grammys, they weren't selling #1 albums, they weren't hitting the Billboard charts at #1, but you love their music. And then you go look at a band like Good Charlotte. They looked just like them, they had the image, but they were putting out music that was getting put on major motion picture soundtracks. You had the girls that were kind of preppy, they weren't into rock music, you knew that, but they were listening to that music. And you were like, well, do I listen to it? And even though you wouldn't admit it, myself, I was listening to them. And I couldn't admit it at the time to my friends, but I used to think, the Madden brothers, they had this awesome image. And, with Joel singing, his voice, it was hard to get, a grasp of it. It's like, okay, these guys are naming off some awesome punk bands as influences, which at the time I was kind of shallow thinking, like, how the hell can those be your influences when you sound nothing like them? In fact, you almost sound like a pop singer trying to sing rock music. And that was my thought process. Again, shallow thinking, right? But no doubt, as I look back now, and behind closed doors, I was throwing on their music and I was listening to it nonstop. I knew every word to every song on their second studio album. And now when I throw them on today, it's a warm feeling of nostalgia. It takes me back. And I can safely admit today, I like Good Charlotte. They're a damn good band. The guys know how to play music. But back in 2002, 2003, I didn't always admit it. So when Joel and Benji Madden actually formed Good Charlotte in the mid-90s, 1995, 1996, around that time, the two brothers definitely had good taste in music. And that's why now, as I got older, I started to realize that just because you're influenced by something doesn't mean you have to completely mimic what your influence is. I can say that I was heavily influenced by maybe MrBeast as a YouTuber, and I'm not saying this is the case, just an example. But does that mean I'm going to go try to do exactly what MrBeast is doing, even though he's making millions of dollars? Well, now that I think about it, that'd be pretty damn nice. But I couldn't do what he's doing because, well, at least not right now, that's not something I would want to do. It wouldn't feel right to me. You got to be yourself, be true to who you are and what you want to do. But you can see somebody else in their success and like what they're doing, but you got to put your own twist on it. So eventually they brought in Paul Thomas on bass, and then they brought Billy Martin on guitar, and then their original drummer, Aaron Escolipio, he wasn't a long-term answer at drums, but that's one part of that band that really never got that much attention. And even to this day, it's really been about the four guys, Benji, Joel, Paul, and Billy. But nonetheless, Aaron was there when they got started. And when they first started doing demos, it was actually their demo of the song Little Things, which was their first single off of their first album, their debut album, self-titled album. that's what really got them noticed in 2000. I mean, around that time, they were out there opening up for bands like Sum 41, Goldfinger, Lit, Mest, some great bands. So these guys definitely got off on the right foot. And when they released their debut album, which they got picked up by Sony Records, it was released through Epic, which is a branch of Sony. These guys were off to the races. And I definitely remember hearing Little Things on the radio quite a bit. I remember seeing it in a couple movies. So that was my first taste of Good Charlotte. Was the song Little Things and was their debut album. But I didn't go out and buy the album. I only knew that one song, and it didn't really draw me in enough to go say, okay, I'm gonna go buy these guys' album and give them a chance. Love the song, but again, you really have to like something enough to say, okay, I'm gonna go check out what else they're about. And that's with all of us. Any band, any music. I can say a lot of bands that I was newly into, they gave me something to kind of draw that interest and say, okay, let's see what else they got. I didn't get that with this song in Good Charlotte, but they were definitely doing it right, and that really helped them as they rolled into 2002, 2003 to get back in the studio to work on their second studio album. So the date was October 1st of 2002 when Good Charlotte released their second studio album, The Young and the Hopeless. Now, right out the gate, these guys, they struck gold. They did phenomenal with this one. They debuted number 7 on the Billboard 200 with this album. The first week, this album sold 117,000 copies. Freaking phenomenal. Not only that, these guys literally, they stayed on the Billboard charts 2 years after this album's released. So this album was absolutely perfect for these guys. And obviously, what set this whole thing in motion was their breakout debut single, Lifestyles of the Rich and the Famous. So obviously the song Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous to me was an awesome song. Like I said before, I didn't admit it at the time, but I listened to this song a lot. And what made it even more awesome was the music video. The music video was phenomenal. Obviously the song is meant to poke fun at the rich and the famous, the celebrities, how they have to be catered to in life. It's all about them. They just need to be front and center for everything. They're number one, and that's just the way it is. And the song was completely meant to just encapsulate that thought process in these people. And the music video is phenomenal. Some awesome cameos. You had Mike Watt, the bassist for Minutemen. You had Kyle Gass from Tenacious D. And one of my favorite cameos was Chris Kirkpatrick from NSYNC. Now, that's another one of those things. If we're talking about Good Charlotte and how I wouldn't admit that I was listening to them, and that's a rock band, and this is a rock channel, and I love rock music. I believe that's the greatest music ever created. I'm a music fan also. I love good music, whether it's country, whether it's pop, whether it's hip hop, doesn't matter. If it's good, I'll listen to it. And it goes for the boy bands and the pop music back then. The Britney Spears, the Christina Aguilera, the NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, all that stuff. I had a younger sister, so I was constantly hearing it coming out of her bedroom. So even though I also definitely wouldn't admit that back then, half the damn songs that they were singing and coming off their albums, I probably knew most of the words to all of them because I heard them so damn much. Same goes for NSYNC. And nowadays, I'll even throw some NSYNC on and let my kids jam to it. And I don't care about it now. I'll admit it. I am a closet boy band fan. Go ahead and poke your fun. It is what it is. I don't give a shit. But seeing that cameo was pretty cool because by this time NSYNC was starting to go into, well, they were done. JT, Justin Timberlake, was starting to blow up, do his thing. NSYNC was no more. So the rest of the guys had to find some way to make money, right? Well, Chris Kirkpatrick found one. He was on one of the coolest videos that year, Lifestyles of Rich and Famous by Good Charlotte. But that was only the beginning because now these guys were being supported on their tours by bands who they were supporting just a year and a half prior. They had Mest supporting them. They had Goldfinger supporting them. Eve 6, tons of other bands. Now they were the ones getting opened up for. So obviously Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous put the whole world on notice for who Good Charlotte was. But they had some awesome songs on them. Boys and Girls, which was another hit single off there. The Anthem, which was my favorite song at the time off this album. And honestly, the music video for that was even cooler. There was a cool story behind it because there's a part in the video where there's a guy like wearing a white t-shirt and he has spiky blonde hair. Because at that time, me and my best friend Chester, half the time we had spiky blonde hair. Sometimes it might be blue, green, black, but most of the time it was blonde. And this guy in this video was a dead ringer for him. And it happened so fast. Like you see him in the video just like 2 times. But the one time you see him, it's like dead on, look just like him. So we used to go around and mess with people telling them, hey, Chester was in the anthem video for Good Charlotte, and it looks so much like him, it was believable. But it was just a cool story, something we could just screw around with people with. And obviously, My Bloody Valentine, awesome song off the album. Riot Girl, another awesome song. It was a great album all around, and you had the Madden brothers who, as it kind of goes, a lot of the songs relate to their childhood. They kind of grew up being raised by their mother. According to them, they kind of grew up a little bit in poverty. Their dad had left the family. So there's good songs in there that kind of help you realize what their childhood was. And you get a lot of insight in who their influences were. They mentioned Rancid. They mentioned Minor Threat. They mentioned Social Distortion, The Clash. These guys gave you a good insight to who they were, the Madden brothers, as people. And then the band as a whole, who they were. And the album absolutely encapsulated everything about Good Charlotte. And it really gave you a good insight to who these guys were and what type of music they were all about. And they were up there in the pop punk, echelon of kings. They were up there with the Green Days, the Blink-182s, the MXPX. At this time, when this album blew up, they were up there with the rest of those guys, 100%. Young and the Hopeless is one of those albums. It's certified all over the world. It's certified 3 times platinum here in the States. So it was an awesome album. To this day, it's a huge nostalgia hit for me. And I know if you were in high school around the time this album came out like I was, you may be different from me, but like I said, I would not admit it, but I love this album. And to this day, I can finally admit it without not giving a shit. It's a good album, man. And no doubt these guys definitely evolved after this. The Madden brothers in their personal life, and the rest of the guys, as they got older, even their music evolved and you could see the difference in sound. So it was great. And I loved what they did on this album. And for the rest of time, that moment in time, this album, it made its mark and it put Good Charlotte forever on the map. And a bunch of fond memories for me on this album. So in the comment section, please, I'd love to know what this album was for you and what are your memories of these songs and what Good Charlotte was at the time. Because I think they're a great group of dudes that know how to definitely do some badass music. So anyway, go out there, take care of your friends and family, do something amazing, and it doesn't matter what people think. If something influences you and makes you want to do something, then go freaking do it, man. Don't worry about the outside noise. Do what feels right to you and be true to yourself. Till next time, take care of yourself. I'm out.